When I see the greatest players in our league today look at him and almost with a level of respect, I haven't seen that. I didn't see it with LeBron coming in. There wasn't T-Mac and AI looking around with the level of respect. With this individual, everyone is looking at him with utter just confusion and just excitement because, like LeBron said, the league is going to be in trouble in a couple years.
The NBA draft lottery took place a few days ago. And the Spurs obviously got the number 1 pick and are now going to select Victor Wembanyama, following in the footsteps of Tim Duncan and David Robinson, sorry. Technically it's Duncan Robinson, but Tim Duncan and David Robinson as obviously number 1 picks for that particular franchise, and they ended up obviously becoming Hall of Famers. But obviously with Wemby being the number 1 pick, there's going to be a lot of expectation. He's one of the most hyped prospects in NBA history, in fact in team sport history. Obviously the most hyped prospect since LeBron James, arguably a better prospect coming into the league than LeBron, but obviously with that comes in a lot of expectation. And we've seen recently Chris Broussard made some comments about thinking that if he doesn't reach a certain level to the likes of AD, KD, Hakeem, that it'd be a disappointment. So I guess the question we're posing today is, and I saw this on Reddit, so whoever the Reddit user was, thank you for giving us this idea. But the question is, if Victor Wembanyama has a career that ends up being like Anthony Davis, does his career end up being classified as a disappointment? So that's the question posed, and I'd love to hear from you, Marcus, because I know you've got an interesting take, and I know that you've always bring forward some good opinions about these things.
Okay, so I'll read out the full quote that Chris Broussard actually said on First Things First. He said, if Wembanyama is Anthony Davis, Kevin Durant, or Hakeem Olajuwon, that's a disappointment. And then he went on to say, I expect him to be one of the best players ever, to have a career like LeBron, Jordan, Duncan, Shaq, and Kareem. Me personally, I think this is ridiculous. Like, he's clearly setting the man up for failure. As good as his upside is already and his potential is, and as good as he is at such a young age, like, nobody has ever really had this amount of pressure on them. I mean, in the last decade at least. You could argue LeBron had it. He probably did. I mean, he probably had more pressure. But in my lifetime that I've witnessed, because, when LeBron was coming in the league, I was 1 year, what the fuck am I saying? I was only 1. So 2003, I haven't really seen this load of pressure being put onto someone. And the closest thing to me, it's Zion Williamson. But I don't think it compares near to what the amount of pressure Victor is currently going through. And as obviously he's got to get drafted to an organization that prioritizes winning over everything. To me, I don't think they look at Victor and think, we need you to be one of the GOATs. They're obviously happy to have a talented player like Victor on their squad, and he can obviously contribute to winning. But the goal is to win championships, and it's not to be one of the greatest players ever, I don't think. And the skill set that he brings, he's easily kind of utilized alongside handy stars, and who knows, maybe that could be Keldon Johnson and Devin Vassell. But I just thought this was crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you on that front, and I kind of feel sorry for him, because as much as obviously he looks like he embraces the hype that comes his way, and obviously he's got a bit of swagger about him, he's got like this certain way he carries himself, which I think it's going to translate well. He's got a confidence about him, and I think if you don't have that kind of confidence coming into the league, you're going to basically be found out quite early on. Obviously, we've never seen a guy this big with this amount of skill and, the all-around game that he does have. Obviously, you saw glimpses of it with Ralph Sampson back in the days when he was a rookie at the Houston Rockets, and everyone thought he was going to be the next big thing, got a few injuries, and then obviously we never saw the same kind of Ralph Sampson. So I'm hoping, touch wood, that it doesn't end up eventuating to that similar sort of situation that played out there. But my concern, or not my concern, but I always worry about this, and it's no fault of Victor's, because the NBA is basically, I feel like they're exploiting him. Yeah. As much as, yes, it's their job, because obviously they're a business, they need to try and show the next generation of talent that's coming into the league, and with a guy with this much hype, they're obviously going to try and take advantage of it, and then that's why they're showing his games on NBA League Pass and, giving him the more attention than some NBA players that are currently in the league, which is crazy to think because he's playing professional ball in France. He hasn't even didn't even declare for the draft at one point of the year, and they were showing all these games. Obviously came over, played against Scoot Henderson in those G League Ignite games, really put him on the map. But I feel like they're kind of setting him up to fail in a way. Yeah. As much as, yes, it's obviously, like I said, the whole emphasis for them is to obviously showcase who he really is, and to give an idea to all the fans like what to expect from him next year. But because I've seen some of the comments on Instagram, people are like writing, "Oh, I'm sick of seeing this guy, he's going to be a bust. He's no different to Bobo. He's no different to Chet, blah, blah, blah." I think people are starting to get irritated by it. Yeah. And it's nothing to do with Victor himself. It's just the fact that the NBA is constantly pumping him out. And what I'm worried about is if he doesn't live up to those expectations of a LeBron James, since, guys like Adrian Wojnarowski and, Richard Jefferson calling him the best prospect ever, Jay Billis, who's covered NBA drafts a long time, he's doing the same thing, saying that, he's on par with LeBron James in terms of, level of prospect coming into the league. The more and more these kind of comparisons are made and these kind of expectations are set on Victor Wembanyama's head, the more chance he has to fail. And like I said, he could have an amazing career. Like Anthony Davis, by no stretch, has had a bad career. Top 75 player. Obviously, you can debate that because, people will say, well, Dwight Howard should have been in there instead of AD. Recency bias sort of kicked into play there. But obviously, the kind of player AD is, the two-way monster he is, and by no stretch of the imagination is that a bad career. And, realistically, AD is probably the best prospect since Wembanyama to come into the draft outside of maybe Zion Williamson. So the fact that, you can consider that as a failed career from a guy like Victor Wembanyama is to me is ridiculous. But in some way, I also do believe that if he doesn't reach those levels, those unfair levels that were set upon him by no fault of his own, then kind of I do believe that, some people would consider that a failure because he's had more hype than LeBron coming in. Yeah. And also, I'm actually shocked that Chris Broussard included Hakeem as saying he's a disappointment. Do you know what kind of career Hakeem Olajuwon had?
You could argue
he was arguably the best center.
Better than Shaq. Like, he put Shaq in the GOATs, but like, that's what I was thinking. I was like, isn't it 1A, 1B? Like, Shaq and Hakeem, you can't really...
Hakeem Olajuwon is arguably the best two-way center ever. Like, he's probably definitely the best defensive center I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And in terms of the offensive side, there wasn't really anything that he couldn't do in terms of his footwork. No one could really guard him. And the fact that he obviously took 2 titles back to Houston during the 90s when Michael Jordan was so dominant. Again, I understand Jordan was out away from the NBA at that time. But even in saying that, the fact that Hakeem achieved all of that, and he's saying that kind of a career would be a disappointment, and a KD career, we know what KD's achieved. And
one of the GOATs, like, they're all GOATs. I don't understand where he's come from either. What were the other players he listed? KD, Hakeem, Dirk?
And AD.
And AD.
And no, he didn't mention Dirk, but obviously that's... you can throw Dirk in there. If you're saying Hakeem's career is a disappointment, then you might as well throw Dirk in there because then Dirk's not LeBron, Jordan, Duncan, or Kareem. So any player that's not those guys basically are a disappointment if you have that kind of a career. But you know what's crazy to think, if it was not Wembanyama being talked about in this situation, then you compare any other player and say, I have a career like AD, KD, or Hakeem. Yeah. Then you'd say like you're a Hall of Famer or you're a GOAT tier player. But because Wemby's had this, like I said, these levels of expectation put upon him and all the weight of the world on his shoulders, then it's different. You know what I mean?
Bro,
and even Nick Wright,
it's crazy. I vividly remember.
I was just gonna say Nick Wright. He goes, if Wemby turns into an MVP and one of the 25 best players ever, and that's considered a disappointment, then we are setting this kid up to fail. And by no stretch of the imagination is that a bad rebuttal, because exactly what we've just said then is what Nick Wright responded to Chris Broussard directly.
I vividly remember.
Back.
Sorry. I vividly remember.
Like, go ahead.
Throughout this NBA season, there was a stage where it was like Scoot and Victor are both arguably generational talents, and that's kind of gone away. I feel like nobody's really talking about anybody else but Victor. And there's so many other guys in this draft, but yet obviously the media see this guy, he's 7'5", like can shoot, put the ball on the floor. They don't realize like how rare this actually, I guess obviously it's super rare and he's an anomaly. But talking about guys like who failed, not necessarily at his height, but even just under, like Hashim Thabit, number 2 pick. You got guys like George Murasan, Manute Ball, couldn't really stay healthy. You got Sean Bradley, couldn't really stay healthy. Yao Ming, great career, couldn't really stay healthy. And then even like Ralph Sampson, like you said, like a great player, but he couldn't stay healthy. So it's like, what expect? Yeah, exactly.
And even Porzingis to a T as well. Obviously, with the ACL injury, and then he was never the same. Obviously, he had a bit of a career resurgence this year with the Wizards, but he was never the same player that he was during those Knicks days.
And even with, like you mentioned, obviously just then, Kristaps Porzingis. If we're going to compare skill sets, I know Kristaps Porzingis is like 7'3", Victor's 7'5". I would say that's probably the closest play comparison you would have to him. And we've seen Kristaps come into the league. Many people thought he would be a bust. It was kind of the opposite thing with Victor, who everybody expects to just be this mega, one of the GOATs of the game, I guess. People thought Porzingis would bust as a Knick. But like we've seen Kristaps come in. He's not a great rebounder. Victor hasn't shown to be a phenomenal rebounder. So there's definitely going to be some talk. Even if Victor is performing to a super high level, people are always going to point out his flaws. And for that reason, I don't think his career is going to be a failure in my eyes. But to all these media people like Chris Broussard, they're going to label him as like a bust almost. Because how can anybody achieve these expectations when you're like, when it's set out? Like, it's just so unfair.
You know, it's funny you mention that. The media is the first set of people that will hype up someone to a point where, like, even with the MVP discussion or any kind of discussion, the moment a player is like at his highest of highs and he's achieving all this greatness in the league, they'll be like, oh, we're seeing the second coming of Larry Bird, we're seeing the second coming of Jordan, blah, 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 blah. But the moment that player starts to have a downfall, has like a really bad season, starts to have a patch of games where he's just stinking it up, they're the first ones to turn as well. Yeah. So the way that, you know, if Wemby all of a sudden has a breakout rookie season, they're going to say this is the best rookie season of all time. And then if he has like a sophomore slump and then going forward he just never reaches that level, let's say he peaks as a rookie, then imagine what they're going to say. Wembanyama is an all-time bust. Like, we saw what he did on his rookie season, and then he's just never lived up to that, and it's such a disappointment. You know, we hyped this guy up to be the best prospect ever, blah, 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 blah. You know, that's just typical of what the media will do, and I put money on it that it's a possibility that takes place. The moment he has like a little switch in his form, or something doesn't go right, or he has trouble adapting to the US game, which I don't think will be the case, but like, I'm just throwing out hypotheticals here. Imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, I don't think necessarily if he has a career like AD would it be a disappointment, but I can understand the reasoning why they would label it that way and why people would have a certain perspective just based off all the I guess information or the take that I had initially when I first obviously started arguing this case. Like, all of that stuff that I mentioned, that's exactly the reason why they would consider it a disappointment, more so than if it actually would be a disappointment, if that makes sense. You know, it's just all the hype that's coming into him will more likely throw his career into the disappointment basket rather than his actual performance and living up to a certain player like an AD or KD, etc. Yeah.
What do you reckon he's got to put up in his rookie year? Just out of like curiosity.
I
could see him coming
I'm going to say
16, 9, 4 assists and like 4 blocks. And people will still think that's like like he hasn't lived up. But those numbers are crazy. Like 4 blocks, 4 assists, 9 boards, and 16.
My prediction is 15.7 points.
Yeah.
7.8 rebounds.
Yeah.
2.1 assists and 3.2 blocks per game.
Yeah, which is still like extremely solid. And if the Spurs win, like, say they win 20 more games, you got to look at that more than like the box score and just think how much of an impact he actually has. Because if he impacts winning like that, I mean, going down the years, people have got to look and be like, oh, he didn't even have that good of a rookie season, but you kind of got to take everything into consideration. And yeah, I definitely think winning's the main contributor to kind of, pinpoint if he's had a successful career when it's all said and done. And to be honest, I would love if he, goes on to win multiple NBA championships. But I guess we'll just find out. Hopefully, I feel bad for the kid, but yeah, I do think that.
I'm just going to quickly check something here. I want to just see what Porzingis averaged in his rookie year, because I'm pretty sure it was like 14 and 9 or something like that, 13 and 9. So if he can exceed that, he's well on his way, because obviously, like I mentioned, I thought Porzingis would be
very good rookie.
One of the best players in the league. Yeah. So his rookie season, I was right. 14.3, 7.3 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks per game. So I wasn't far off.
Yeah.
So yeah, if he can average anywhere close to that and exceed that, then he's well on his way. But obviously, like I said, with the expectation that and the precedence that's been set upon his name based off all the hype that he's generated and all the attention, like I mentioned, people are going to be expecting 20, 10, and 2. You know what I mean? That's just craziness in my opinion. Yeah. And the last kind of big man, obviously not to the level like a Wembanyama, because he's not the same height and he was undersized power forward, was Elton Brand. The last guy I remember averaging big numbers in his rookie year was Brand. He basically, what I just said then was what Elton Brand averaged his rookie season in Chicago. I'm going into it now, and if you look at it, mind you, he was a 2-year college player, so it's a bit different to sort of compare. And the game was a lot different. It was more of a basket game back in that time. But in his rookie season, he averaged 20.1 points per game, 1.6 blocks, 10 rebounds, and 2 assists a game on 48% from the field.
I mean, 48%.
Yeah,
is great.
And he averaged that back-to-back seasons.
Jesus Christ.
He averaged that on back-to-back seasons. He averaged 20 and 10, 20 and 10, 18 and 11, 18 and a half and 11 with 2.5 blocks, 20, 10, 3.3 assists, 2.2 blocks, 29 and a half, 2.6 assists, 2.1 blocks, and then he had 24.7 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 2.5 blocks per game, and again he had another 20 point per game season. So in his first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In his first 8 seasons, he had 6 seasons where he averaged 20 plus points and nearly 10 rebounds a game. Elton Brand was a ridiculous player, and I don't think people realize how good he was. And that's the thing, we forget about how good some of these rookie seasons were, and then if Victor was, like I said, to average that 15-7 and 3 blocks, you'd almost say, is that good enough? You know what I mean? When you see guys of this caliber getting these kind of numbers, obviously, or maybe not on winning teams, but nonetheless, you'd expect that people would have that certain level of expectation, and I wouldn't be surprised even if the numbers that we predicted, you and I both just then, they wouldn't be good enough. A lot of media people, whether it's from ESPN, FS1, whichever media outlets they're from, or from the general public who obviously are NBA fans and take in the game as much as we do. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'm keen to see how his rookie season pans out, and obviously the entirety of his career, and hopefully, like I said, fingers crossed he can stay healthy, because a guy like that is obviously a generational talent, and we want to see the best of him, not just him at 60%, 70% for his entire career. So touch wood, it all goes to plan. Yeah,
100%. And if you're viewing this and you look at Victor and you're thinking this is NBA 2K, he's got to come to the league averaging 32, 18 and 12 blocks. Like, get the hell on with it, because that's not happening. But what you should expect is Victor to make a massive impact at San Antonio. They'll probably win about 15 plus more games, I reckon. And he'll probably kill it in his rookie year. But it's just not... He's not going to come into the league and just be at his peak. Like, he's not going to be physically developed enough, strong enough. His game's not going to be as sharpened as it will be at his peak. But, I mean, yeah, just let the kid play and all will take care of itself.
I'm excited to see Victor and Chet going at it. Obviously, they had that matchup in the World Championships a few years back when France played the US, and that was an exciting matchup. And obviously, we haven't seen Chet in NBA action, so it's going to be the first time we see both of them, suited up in a proper NBA game, not just in the summer league or in the preseason. So I'm looking forward to seeing a healthy Chet and a healthy Victor, and seeing that kind of matchup for years to come. And we'll end up seeing who had the better career. Imagine Chet has a better career than Victor. That's not going to go down well with the media either, but that's a discussion for another day. But if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and a like, because that helps us know what kind of content you guys are into. And again, we're on our way to the 500 subscriber mark, which is where the giveaway will take place, which I mentioned at the start of the video. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Bench Mob community.
Absolutely.
And it'll be much appreciated.
Yeah, 100%. Make sure you hop on the Bench Mob early, because all things are coming. We're coming for the whole NBA community. We're coming for everybody, and we want you guys to be a part of it.
100%. Well, appreciate your support, guys, and from your boy Danko.
This has been Marcus from the Bench Mob. Catch you guys later.
And we'll see you in the next video.